Hello. It's been a while since I done a car video, but I gotta do what I gotta do. So we're gonna jump right into this video because you see the title. Let's do it. Episode 19. We're off to a good start in my book since episode 19 starts exactly how volume 14, chapter 61 starts. We kind of see the birth of James Tyrrell, or Tyrell, I'm not sure how you say the last name. He has no idea who he used to be, so these randoms give him something to do. Now, I know I haven't been talking about James, even though he has been popping up in past episodes. So I will do some kind of YouTube short to give him his, show him off a little bit from the past if I haven't talked about in past episodes. Anyway, look forward to it. Back to the episode. Buckingham came to those people and wanted to give the shepherd a message. Shepherd is what Henry called himself when he was meeting up with Richard. Anyway, the message was, you have a new master now, our future monarch, King Richard III. This is probably why you've seen him watching and following Richard those times. Cuts to James saying, life is punishment. We live today so that we might perish later. Not sure how I feel about that. Just take that as you will. Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. I'm not sure how, but I thought it was a good quote. Then we have Buckingham and Richard are having a casual conversation. Here's where the animation gets lazy. In the manga, you see that Buckingham is somewhat standing while asking Richard, are you cold? He said he was as long as he had wine. Buckingham is not a fan and mentioned soup. This reminded Richard of how he spent the night with Henry and made soup together. In the episode, the dialogue is pretty much the same in the manga. They cut the part Richard calls him Buckingham instead of his given name. You would see that he was shocked. All he cares about if Richard is okay. He lets him know that he is his other half. Richard opens up about how he once killed the person he loved the most. Buckingham was aware of this, but he didn't know that the person he loved was an enemy of his family, the Lancaster king, Henry. He talks about how he was his salvation. In the manga, the expressions and the reactions were more detailed, of course. You could see that Buckingham was shocked by this revelation. However, that didn't stop him from letting Richard know that he is there with him. He wants him to call him his name, which is Henry. Look who shows up, James Tyrrell. Wish they included this in the anime. It's a cool shot. Anyway, when James hears the name Henry, he starts remembering how he was there. Richard muttering to himself, Henry in his sleep. He thinks the Henry he was talking about was Buckingham, but it was James himself that was Henry, his beloved. James is in his head as he watches them be intimate through the window. All these feelings start welling up inside, and there are a couple of flashes of people he killed. In the manga, he asks himself, what if the truth is that long before I was born all this time, I too wanted to love? He was falling and made a noise which caused Buckingham to come outside to see what's going on. As soon as he saw him, he could tell that he'd seen him somewhere before. He said he was identical to the Lancaster king. I prefer the dialogue and the scene in the manga. In the manga, James asks Buckingham, will you teach me about love? Such a beautiful scene, the way he opens his heart to you. I, too, wish to step into that shining light. They cut out this next part entirely when the Henry comes down to check on Buckingham. He makes sure that Richard couldn't see James. You can see how worried Buckingham was if Richard did end up seeing James. Then we move on to Beth, who was allowed to attend the ball because of Richard. Everybody was in mass, so she could just conceal herself. More importantly, she was shocked that her mom let her go, which makes her believe that she's up to something. Apparently, the Earl of Richmond is the stepson of Lord Stanley. He is also up to no good. Eventually, we see that Buckingham and Richard have to come back to reality, so they end up sharing one last kiss and looking to each other's eyes so lovingly. Then we go to Catesby and Edward with his sword lessons. Unfortunately, he's not that very good. Richard has always loved fighting. He wanted to be more like him, his father. But all the rumors start getting to him. He looks nothing like Richard. People say he's not his father's child. Eventually, Richard shows up and wants to know what people are saying. Edward heard them call Richard a demon, and he hated hearing how Richard was being talked about. They take a walk through the garden, talking about how he didn't appreciate the flowers, always thinking the white rose was a vow of vengeance, and always thinking that the red rose was the proof of blood spilled. He learned to enjoy his surroundings. Here's a quote to express that. Not always seeking meaning, simply existing. Richard relates to Edward considering that he didn't resemble his father either, but they had a bond like no other. This is exactly what Edward needed to hear. This is exactly what Edward needed to hear. Then they share a nice moment together, Richard claiming Edward is his son, and is looking down to seeing them together. Even though Richard can't love Anne the way she wants him to, she can definitely tell that he loves Edward as his own. Unfortunately, they still need a way to kill the rumors. Buckingham wants the Queen and to birth his child. But Richard doesn't know if he can make a child with his body. He admits that Edward isn't his biological real son. They say real in the manga, but that's not a good word to say. Buckingham wasn't happy that he kept this a secret. Immediately wanted him to disinherit him. What made matters worse was that he was the child of the son of King Henry. Buckingham continues to say that Richard's brother's child, would be better, but Richard stands his ground. He already has a bond with Edward and says the title of the episode, I will protect Edward. That child is my son. This is the first time they had a fight. They go their separate ways. Looks like James was waiting for Buckingham because he wants to learn about love. But Buckingham asks, why do you want to know about love? Once you know it, you can never return. Buckingham is trying to figure out why he let Richard go. He's upset. So upset that I guess James thought he needed comforting. Buckingham was confused and asked, what are you doing? Then James responds, you seemed sad. So I disappeared. Your tears. Yes, disappeared. I thought that was a weird phrasing, but his heart was in the right place. But I do like what he says next. The strong do not seek salvation, meaning they're too prideful to ask for help. I would say Richard can also be prideful at times. He's starting to doubt that Buckingham will ever come back to him. And to end this episode, the twins are still stuck in the tower until help arrives. There is some kind of guy with a mask who's ready to break them out. Episode 20. We pick up right where we left off. The man tells them about the rumors and how he lost Richard's support, ever since he was crowned king. He also tells them that the people that Edward V is indeed the true king. Edward is shocked that they only realize this now. Calls them fools. Anyway, they leave the tower. Eventually, we see the man behind the mask. It's Earl of Richmond. He's continuing his schemes while rhyming, by the way. His goal is to be the king, but if there's a true king, can he still be a king? He doesn't look worried. In the manga, he says, fate decided everything from the start, which means everything is going according to plan. Richmond announces their escape, but it looks like they didn't get very far. Buckingham is trying to get a hold of things, but it looks like he's wanting to kill the Richard's child. In the manga, he says the existence of that child is indeed a danger. Then again, he could be talking about Edward V, since he was making a fuss while he was getting taken away. I'm not sure at this point. Back to Buckingham. Once again, James shows up. He promises to help him and kill whoever he wants if he grants him his wish, which is once again to teach him about love. The next scene, a minor scene, didn't make it to the anime. Richard is out there doing his part, trying to figure out how the children escaped. As you can see, he's not feeling very well. Edward and Anne noticed, so they urged him to go to bed and rest. Back to the episode. Catesby is trying to convince Richard to get checked out by a doctor, but he doesn't want to show anybody his cursed body. The only option was Jane the witch. So he starts telling her all the symptoms he's been having: nausea, dizziness, and feverish when he's tired. Here's something they censored in the anime. In the manga, Jane is touching Richard's breast since she's got to know the body and she hasn't seen his body. But the approach could have been more doctorly. Eventually, she has an answer. And I liked how the manga just got cut to the chase. And she simply said, "It's possible that you may be pregnant." Of course, Richard argues, "I'm not a woman." But Jane states that you are a woman and you are a man. I can't ignore the possibility. Plus, Richard has been having sex with Buckingham on a regular basis. This was cut from the anime, Richard denying that there's a life growing inside him and he shouldn't trust that witch. Moving on, Buckingham is returning to his lands. Clearly, Richard is not okay with that, so of course, Catesby already knew he wanted to go after him, so he was along for the ride to Buckingham's residence. Buckingham is in his head, thinking back if he should really have killed someone, but he says the answer is clear and that he's doing it for Richard's sake. Speaking of Richard, he's arrived. At first, Buckingham invited him to dinner as the king, so they couldn't be alone together, but then Richard collapsed. He ended up in Buckingham's bed. All it took was one look and Richard calling Buckingham's name and then passionate kiss. This is where you really should be reading the manga to enjoy Buckingham and Richard moments. The dialogue in the anime was good, but manga better. My favorite is when Buckingham says, "It's no piece of your heart belongs to someone other than me. The mere thought of it is enough to drive me mad." Ugh, my heart. One more thing before I get back to the episode. I'm pretty sure they had sex. They can't keep their hands off of each other. In my opinion, they made it seem like they only cuddled. Richard tells Buckingham how he let Jane examine him and most importantly, how she thought he could be pregnant. Buckingham was happy about it. They skipped this part from the manga, so let me enlighten you real quick. He was basically telling him how bad this could be. There are already rumors going around, so things could be getting worse, or could get worse. Buckingham was not happy that Richard wanted to get rid of their potential child. Buckingham realizes what he's wished for from the bottom of his heart: Richard. So then, he drugs him. We cut to Catesby. He's worried since Richard hasn't come out yet. He's wondering what his next move should be. We're seeing the toxic, obsessive side of Buckingham. He says he's not going to keep him locked in the tower forever, just until he calms down. He has a plan. He's going to have Richard grow out his hair so he can disguise himself as a woman. Then they're going to get a house somewhere together, far away from prying eyes, and they can have their child in peace. But that's not what Richard wants. He tells them how he's been imprisoned when he was younger, many times, and he assumed Buckingham was also in prison. Their lives were in the hands of someone in power. Richard asks, "Is this not the thorn we were trying to cut away?" What he truly desires is the crown. Catesby came in with his sword ready to protect, but Richard said, "Put it away." He gave Buckingham a look and called his name and just told him to let him go. And then he did, even though he was very sad when he said, "Yes, Your Majesty." Oh man, he did not want to let him go, but now this is where it gets a little confusing, manga-wise. Looks like they switched things up a bit in the anime. In the anime, Richard visits the church where George, his brother, is buried, as well as Edward of Lancaster, the biological father of Edward, Richard's son. He ends up talking to a priest or someone religious, I'm not sure exactly, but he has no idea he's talking to the reigning king and ends up calling him a demon king. Richard accepts it because he knows he's killed people that were in his way of getting the crown. In the manga, this part doesn't come until the early pages of Volume 15. Near the end of Volume 14, before Richard visits the church, Buckingham is doubting what Richard's true desire is. It's kind of spiraling. He says, "The thorns that bind you are not mine. What binds you is the blood of so many that stains the throne, and the title of king." Then James comes back and asks, "Have you decided your wish?" Buckingham has decided to kill Richard III. That's where Volume 14 ends. No more complicated love story, I guess. Back to the episode, we have Buckingham visits the Bishop of Ely and setting him free. They're talking about how they were bewitched and seduced by Richard's beauty, paid for their crimes, and take down the king together. In the manga, the scene takes place right before Richard goes to the church, and in the very beginning of Volume 15, Buckingham says, "This hand of mine made him king. I must be the one to take the crown back from him." So basically, this last bit of the episode was slightly confusing if you were trying to follow along with the manga. But the main thing is, Buckingham is ready to take down Richard. So that is where I'm going to end this episode. I hope you enjoyed this. Make sure you check out the playlist of the other videos when I've talked about other episodes and went along with the manga, tell you all the differences. You know how it goes. You should know by now. Sorry for this weird setup. I just really wanted to get this video out to you before this month ends. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of my videos in the future. Oh, and let me show you my shirt real quick. I really wanted to show you for Pride Month, you know. Yay! Just a little fun. DC Pride. You know, this is Nightwing. All right. Fun. Anyway, hot topic. So, yes, once again, check out the playlist in the description box below. I'm Michaela. I'll see you later. Bye.